Just like, thank God.
Okay, we're live. 30 minutes later. That was so stressful. I'm so sorry, you guys. I thought it was going to be so much easier than what it became.
This was so not easy.
It was not easy at all. I don't know. I feel like in the last few years, like going live with people has changed on YouTube.
One thing that hasn't changed that is still really ugly.
It is really ugly. You should have seen me and Brittany, like, we were on Google Hangouts before this, privately, like, reading off of, like, Googling, like, how to do it.
This girl. Also, nobody
helped me. I was like, I don't know. I don't see anything.
Nobody includes pictures anymore. And I'm like, what? You can't explain these things without photographs. Show me things.
Right.
I was just like, I don't know. I don't see anything.
Oh my God.
There should be like a YouTube video like showing how to do it.
I know. I had to delete the other live show and it had such a pretty little like thumbnail. I'm so mad.
I know, but we know next time that like it'll be, we know what's up next time.
We know what to expect. But anyways, so we're here to discuss becoming. For the longest time I thought the title of the book was Becoming Michelle, and then I realized it was just Becoming.
You were saying Becoming Michelle Obama.
I was saying Becoming Michelle by Michelle Obama, but it's really just Becoming.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, no, I was going to say I could see how it is, but even on the cover, it's like separate. So,
yeah.
I don't know where I got Becoming Michelle from. Becoming Michelle has a nice ring to it, though.
It does. It does.
So I just thought, oh, okay. And it makes sense. Like, it's all about how she became Michelle Obama. So I was like, okay. But then when I actually looked at the book cover, I was like, oh.
Honestly, if someone hadn't told me it was called Becoming, I probably would have thought it was Becoming Michelle Obama as well. So
and I would really be there too. I don't know, it's still Becoming Michelle.
Yeah. It's just broken into parts, becoming me, becoming us.
I know.
Like, I love Michelle, but she didn't have to write such a dense book.
Girl.
It's 400 something pages, but I feel like this book is like 600 something pages.
I cried. I had to put it down at times because it was so heavy. Like I just finished it a few hours ago and I'm still like shell shocked in a way.
Yeah, it was just like, girl, I'm sorry.
It was a lot.
It took me a minute to get into it. I feel like maybe in chapter 4, I was finally like, okay, I'm really starting to really like this book. But it took me a minute. It kind of was reading slow, but also I was kind of reading slow in the audiobook.
The thing is that I didn't expect it to literally go over her whole life. I know that sounds really stupid, but I honestly thought she was going to start with like what everyone wants to know, which is like meeting Barack, the presidency, how she juggled being a first lady, a wife, a mom, you know, and her own career aspirations. I for some strange reason, I thought it was going to start there. So when the book started with her literal childhood, it kind of threw me for a moment. I was like, oh.
And they didn't start from like her childhood when she was like 10. They started when she was like in diapers. I was like, okay, Michelle, you can start all the way from the beginning.
Yes.
From her first piano lessons. And I was just like, wow, we're going back.
I was like, do you even still play piano? I'm curious.
The keys weren't messed up, so I'm sure she doesn't play anymore.
I will say that what surprised me the most about this book was just how entrenched Michelle, the Robinsons, and even Barack, once she finally met him, how entrenched they were in Chicago and how deep the roots ran and how entrenched they were in South Side Chicago and how involved in the community. And even after she went away to Princeton and then Harvard and then came back home, like it surprised me how many different jobs she had, how she switched careers. And so often, like I was like, Michelle Obama done had about 5 jobs.
No. I completely, like when she started telling her story about how she had worked so hard to like become this lawyer. And then when she finally got to being a lawyer, she hated it. I was like, girl, I feel you so in my soul right now. Like
that's how I feel about college.
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think what moved me so deeply was just how much I resonated with the book and so many, like how much I resonated with Michelle. And like, it's weird because reading the book didn't really change my opinion on her. Like I've always admired her. And I feel like I admire her more now because I connect with her and I identify with her in ways that I was surprised to find out. Reading about how, you know, her tough childhood, but she had parents that really grounded her and gave her really every opportunity to succeed. And they kind of built this like wall, or they kind of, not like she grew up in like a glass box or anything, but they kind of made her believe that she could achieve anything, and how that became like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like they never were like, oh well, we're poor and we're black, so good luck, girl. No, they were like, no, like you can do whatever you can do whatever you put your mind to. Like it doesn't matter your circumstances or your surroundings. Like her parents really dedicated themselves to making sure her and her brother Craig had every opportunity they could possibly have, despite their background and their surroundings. That was crazy, because I feel that resonates with a lot of African American families, especially lower income or blue collar, middle class. I feel like that resonates with a lot of immigrant Black families that come to America and want to make something of themselves. So I feel like, I don't know, I felt that on such a deep core level, because that's how my parents raised me. And I was just like, wow, that's crazy. That was like my first huge like moment of like connecting to Michelle. And I was like, oh.
Same for me, because my parents went by money is not little kid business. So I even tried to be like, oh, but we can't afford that. They'd be like, is that your business?
Oh my gosh.
Yes, I felt so like connected to Michelle in that moment, and how she also, a moment that really struck with me was like how she had this one moment in childhood, you know, when she couldn't spell the word white, or she couldn't recognize that was the word, and how that really like set this tone for her entire life when it came to her academics. She was like, y'all ain't never gonna see me fail like that ever in your life.
You'll never catch me slipping like that ever.
Yes, it was like,
It was like 5, but you know.
She literally demanded a do-over. She like went to school and was like, no ma'am, I'm gonna need another spelling test. I'm so sorry. We don't need to do this again. I was like, wow, she was determined from like day one to not fail.
Yeah, she's always been Michelle Obama, apparently, because
From birth.
that was serious.
That whole idea of like go hard or go home was like in her blood, apparently.
Yes.
That's what I needed as a kid. I didn't have that. I still don't have all that.
I was more shy. I would have never had the guts to demand a do-over from the teacher. I would have taken that L and just been upset about it and just been like,
no. I would have been the one to ask for a redo. I was that child. I competed with my older brother a lot. Like I couldn't understand why he was learning how to read, but like I was just doing letters. So I was that child. I was like, no, you're gonna teach him and me because I'm here too. Like I totally understand her thought process. And I was like, that was me. I was that child. That was totally that child.
Nah, I would have just been like, I can't spell white. Okay, moving on. And then not told my parents, because I probably would have been murdered.
And did anyone else feel like such a deep, like that word in itself had like a deeper meaning of just like her not being able to spell that word? I don't know. It just really hit me. I was like, that word of all words.
Of all words.
That was so crazy to me. I was like,
I asked myself, I'm like, was it really the word white, or did you change it to the word white for the book? Like, did your publishers tell you to change it to that so that it would immediately grab our attention?
It just seems so coincidental and yet so nicely fitting into the whole, like, one of the bigger themes of the novel, which was, I felt like a really huge theme of the novel was succeeding in a Black environment and then going on to succeed in a white environment, and not letting your Blackness be a hindrance in any way, shape, or form, not in yourself and not in the eyes of others. It's like, I'm not going to accept that you're going to use this to hold me back, and I'm not going to let you use it to hold me back. It was like a double-edged thing. And so when I read that word, I was like, is that really happen?
Yeah, I was like, I kind of feel like this was perfectly placed.
Perfect.
I'm not going to judge her for that because she has my attention unconsciously anyway.
Because that like really resonated with me, that theme, especially when she spoke about like her parents and her grandparents and her grandfathers in particular on both sides, and how their ambitions and their dreams had been crushed due to systematic racism, laws that had been systematically put in place to keep them at the bottom, to keep them from joining unions, to keep them from going to college, to keep them from, you know, climbing the ladder of their careers, to keep them at the bottom and to kind of keep them like socioeconomically stifled, so they wouldn't be able to buy homes and they wouldn't be able to get higher education and they wouldn't be able to climb up socioeconomically, which in turn set it up to make it harder for their children to climb up. You know what I'm saying? Like it's such like it's such an entrenched thing. It's like it goes so deep. And I didn't really realize it. I mean, it's very obvious, obviously, when you think about Jim Crow and all the different laws that happened to, especially after slavery, to keep Black people from advancing, right? And even with the Industrial Revolution, how they did not give jobs in factories. If they could not give the jobs to Black men and women, they didn't, and they would give it to European immigrants or other immigrants instead. And it's like, you know, that's there because you read the history, but she put it in such a context of a family that made it so clear that the fact that she and her brother went to Princeton was huge in itself. Like, wow, like y'all skipped, like y'all went from here to here in one generation.
Also, how did you guys feel about that counselor moment where she talked about the counselor? About how like she told the counselor she wanted to go to Princeton.
Her college counselor.
And then the counselor was like,
yeah,
for you. Like I could hear the counselor's voice in my head and everything. Like,
See, I've had a counselor like that in high school. Actually, I ended up failing this business class, and I took credit recovery and got an A in it. And my counselor refused to recognize it. Like she would not give me the A. She kept on saying that she didn't get the paperwork for it, even though I worked for the credit recovery teacher, and he kept telling me he sent it to her and she said no. So to this day, you can look on my transcripts. There's a big F on my transcripts. This is a Black woman too. Like a Black woman did this to me. She kept the F on there, and I had to retake another technology class. And I was like, yo, this woman is like really getting on my nerves. And my dad went up there and everything, like she would not change it. And my dad is very not the one. And he just like, but she wouldn't do it.
That's really sad.
It's ridiculous.
Because counselors are supposed to like exactly that, counsel you and help you and stuff. And it's crazy the amount of counselors that do the opposite or discourage, you know, kids from really thinking that they can go to the school of their dreams or pull up their grades and things like that. And I'm like, why are you even in this job description? You clearly don't like your job.
Right. It's like you're
so many of them don't even like kids.
Yeah. A lot of counselors that work at high schools that don't even like kids. And I'm just like, setting us up for failure, thanks.
How do you think about the way the book was broken up? Because wasn't it like, I'm trying to remember the sections.
It's becoming me, becoming us, and then becoming her.
Yeah.
So it was her until she met Barack. And then from her and Barack dating, having kids, to him getting elected for president. And then from him becoming president to their end of their presidency when Kara, top in chief, came in.
So let's talk about the book in the 3 separate sections and try to make this somewhat cohesive. So we've already started, but let's talk about becoming me a little bit more. What part stuck out to you guys in that first section, besides the ones we've already talked about?
You see these tabs?
Oh my God.
Most of these tabs are in becoming me. Like,
what?
Well, for one, she went to a PWI.
Yes.
So I went to Florida State.
Okay.
And the way that she felt going into Princeton was how I felt going into Florida State, where it was like they automatically put me in these groups with the minorities. Like they automatically, because I came in straight from my dad being in the military, and you know, the military doesn't get paid for squat diddly.
Right.
So when they saw like the internet, they just put me, as they put it with the, I forgot what it was called at Florida State, but basically it insinuated that like you couldn't really afford to be here, but we were going to keep you here to keep the numbers up. Basically. Yeah. Like PWIs do that so their numbers look good, basically. So they have programs where they provide like tutors and all that other stuff. And I met.
Time out. Let's just dissect the acronym for those that are unaware of what that means.
Oh, PWI. What does PWI stand for?
Predominantly white and
university. What is it? Institution?
In my head.
I'm pretty sure.
Institution?
Institution, I think, is what it is. Yeah. because I was right across the street from FAMU, which is, you know, HBCU.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a historically
black college, historical black college and universities. There we go.
Okay.
So
continue.
it was like her feeling of alienation, and like I found myself being drawn to like the Black Student Union and all that stuff, all those groups. I literally gravitated towards them because of the comfort that they brought. I didn't have to feel like I had to pretend to be something, because once you go into class, they automatically look at you and they label you as the way that they think you're supposed to act. Plus, that was around the time that reality TV really became like a big thing. I was constantly being greeted by girls in manners of like, "Hey, girl," and it was driving me nuts. So it was just like I gravitated and stayed with. I mean, I ventured out as I got into my degree, because not a lot of Black people were in my degree.
Okay.
But for the most part, and especially freshman year, oh, you could catch me at the Black Student Union all the time during my free time.
Yeah.
Like, why go to other places when I could just sit right here and be comfortable?
Yeah.
Funny enough, I also go to a white university, and I'm an English major. So whenever I'm in English classes and we're like getting to know people, people are always just like, "So what are you?" Sam Houston is a criminal justice college, so they're always like, "What are you, a criminal justice major?" And I'm like, "Why would I be in the senior class for criminal justice in an English class? How does that make any sense?" They're asking me because they're just like, "You can't possibly be literate." Like,
you don't think? Do you think that's what it is? That's intense.
They always ask me.
Yeah, they don't. I think it's a subconscious thing. They don't even realize that they're using their to ask the questions.
Especially because this is Texas and this is the country.
Oh God, Texas, love it.
It's funny. I went to a PWI as well. I went to a private school, but I think because I went to school for art, it was just a different environment. Like artists, I think in general just tend to be a little bit more open and welcoming. I met a lot of people that came from. I met a lot of white students that came from small towns where they didn't interact with a lot of Black people. But it's almost as if they seem like ashamed of that fact, rather than just like, oh, yeah. They were more like, "I'm so sorry. Like, I don't want to offend you." But so that was interesting. But we still found ways to have community within like the art school. Like I remember we did one show where it was an all Black cast. That was cool. And we had like our own little powwows. There weren't a lot of us, so we all inevitably got to know each other and like became friendly with one another. But I think it was just a different vibe because it was art school, and artists are trained to really be open and to want to share in each other's cultures because we're all making art. And so there's almost like a higher calling to what we're doing. So people are a little bit more open in that environment, a little bit more welcoming. And it was just a more loving, creative space. So I couldn't really 100% relate to what she was saying, but I could kind of at the same time. Mostly it just reminded me of when my family came to America, and it was kind of a culture shock because in a lot of African nations, especially I can only speak for my experience in school. I was in school in Nigeria up until like 7 years old. At that point, we hadn't learned a lot historically. So not only did I not know much about colonization, even though we were a product of colonization, and we had only been independent for a handful of years, I knew absolutely nothing about slavery and the history of slavery. So when I came to America, I was under the impression that America was a white country and there would only be white people there. Like that was my 7-year-old understanding. So when we came here and I saw people that looked like me, I was so excited. I was running around. I was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." And then when I learned the history of it, I remember it was very traumatizing because I learned about it in 2nd grade, and the way that I went to an inner city school in Philly, and the way that the white teacher thought that it would be best to teach us would be to make us coloring sheets of slave ships of the people, like, you know how they laid them down in the ships, head to foot. Oh, here's the coloring sheet.
They make coloring sheets for that?
Girl, I didn't even know. Here's a coloring sheet of Black bodies laying down in slave sheets. When I tell you the trauma, like my parents were like, "You literally didn't talk, like you just started screaming. We had to come get you from school." Like that was such a shocking way to learn about the history of Black people in America, much less to like comprehend at 7, 8 years old. And then have like kids. It was intense. And then you can't even grasp it at that age. And then to fully like try to understand that bodies were commodified as objects, and like it's just so crazy. And I just remember being so traumatized, and then I began to feel like the otherness of my Blackness. Like at first I was just like, I'm so excited, there's like other Black people in America, this is great. And then once I learned history, I was like, oh no. Like maybe this is not as great as I thought. And I started to learn like the otherness of like me being Black in America. And I was like, oh no. So it was just, there's so many layers to it as a child, and then like trying to grow up and trying to grapple with that history again and again and again as you go through different stages of life, adolescence. By the time I got to college, I was so entrenched in like the art community that I almost feel like I ran to art as an escape of like, this is the one place where all of these different types of people can come together, and we're not all trying to fight to be seen, heard, understood. You know, there is no fight here for recognize me as a human being and don't come at me with all these stereotypes. It was kind of like a sacred place. And so I feel like I ran to art for that. But the school that I went to wasn't just an art school. I went to NYU. So outside of that circle, there was everything else that was going on, because it was a PWI after all. So in some sense, I related to Michelle. I was like, girl, she found her own place to run to for refuge. What do they call it in the book? It was like I
forgot what it's called, but it's basically the Black Student Union.
Basically.
Yeah.
And so I definitely understood her having to find that refuge on campus. I was like, I get that, because I ran to art as my refuge, and theater and things like that. But yeah, that stood out to me in the first part of the book. What else stood out to me? What?
Her dad. Well, actually, her dad stood out to me through the entire book, and I literally felt way too emotional.
I can't, guys.
Yeah, I have a very strong connection to my dad too. So it's like, I remember when I was younger, my dad would like hold all of his pain from me, but then like try to give me the world anyway.
Yeah.
And like, as you're getting older, you see your parents kind of like getting older, and you're like, so that's been going on this whole time.
Right.
Oh, okay. Weird. Like I had to put the book down after that. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go cry. I'll be back.
I know. Her dad had a strong presence in her life, and I found that to be really like, I connected to that, but I also found it really nice to see, because by the time we as like America meet Michelle Obama, he was already gone. So we didn't know her in the context of that. We only knew her mom, Marion, and her brother, Craig. And that's all we saw, like during Obama's 8 years. And so going back and like really learning about her dad, it was weird. Like I never even thought about him. Like I kind of vaguely knew that he passed. I never really thought about him until I read the book and saw like what a huge presence he was in her life, and how much of her and who she became was because of him.
I had to stop reading about her dad because I have a very close family member who has MS, and it was really messing with me. And I was just like, no. And I was actually listening to audiobook out loud with my grandmother, and she was like, okay, Nene, you have to like turn that off before I start crying, because it was just too much. And I was just like, no, I can't. And then it's not my dad, but I am a daddy's girl. So I was just like, no, I don't want to hear this.
And that's why I recommend the audiobook to everyone watching, like all y'all, like if you haven't read the book yet, or if you have, I still recommend you get the audiobook, because the emotion in her voice in certain parts of the story really enriched the reading experience for me. Like the emotion in her voice when she was talking about her father and everything that he dealt with, and how like despite all of the pain and everything, he was just steadfast through it all, and he was just steady, and he just kind of accepted his fate, and he just carried on. He just did what he had to do. He went to work, he cared for his family, despite, the unfairness basically that life had handed at him. He was just kind of like, oh well, like what are you gonna do? And he just continued on to the end. And I don't know, like the emotion in her voice when she spoke on that, especially towards the end of his life, like you could kind of hear it in her voice. Like I was like, oh, I can't.
Yeah, I had straight thug tears.
Okay.
I was just like,
I cried quite a few times. I a lot of times I had to put the book down and then revisit it later.
Anytime it was her dad, I was just like, is this the part where he's gonna die? Because I don't want to read this.
The part where he his feet had swelled up and he was still trying to go to work, and she looked outside and he was sitting on the steps because he didn't even have the energy to make it to the car. I was like,
I can't handle it.
Yeah. It's like you knew it was coming, and she built it up in a way where you just immediately felt so much for her father that it was just like, I can't, this man is gonna die soon. I don't want to do this. Can you tell me where I can skip the part of the book so I can just skip to the next section?
Right, just skip the whole chapter.
Yeah, just skip this whole part. I know it's coming. I don't want to do this.
It was so sad. And yet at the same time, like, I wish we knew, we got so much info on her dad. I wish we knew more about Marion in that time of her life, because
we talked about her mom when it came down to her trying to decide what kind of woman she wanted to be after she had kids.
Yes.
And that was really where you learned all the different sacrifices and stuff that her mom made for her and her brother.
But let's not do that. Let's wait for to have that discussion. Let's move on to discuss Becoming Us. How cute was it how she met Barack?
That was the cutest thing in the world. She was so just about him.
Can you guys imagine him walking into her office the way that she described him?
All late and everything. Like
all late.
I would just like to say that I really think Michelle is a boss for how she handled that first interaction, because I don't know how she could like control herself. Because to me, like, even if he wasn't like Barack Obama, our president, I'm like, so charming, like his voice.
Yes.
And he has a great smile, so I'm sure he came in
all laid back and chill.
I'm sorry, if he walked into my office, I think I would be like, hi. Like, she was just so cool about it. She's like, you're
like,
late.
yeah, you're like 2 hours late, but hey, girl, hey. Or when he picked her up and there was that hole in his car.
Oh my God.
Okay, we're skipping ahead though. We gotta go in order. Okay. So how they met was really cute. How did you guys think about the progression of their relationship?
I think that was my favorite part about it. It was just so like, it was just her like going, oh, here, date my friend. Oh, here, we're just cool. We're going to go to this really boring play.
Like, I don't want any of that.
I know. He like knew exactly what
he was like, tell her what you want.
You know, Barack was probably always like, oh my God, she can't be right? She's like this high-powered lawyer. She can't be dumb.
I think I like underlined that whole part where like she took him to that happy hour.
Yeah.
And, like, she was pretty much trying to like pawn him off on everybody.
Yes.
And he was like looking at her the whole time. Like, I don't know what game you're playing, but like, I'm not here for anybody but you. And I was like, you better go get your woman. It was
I really enjoyed seeing Barack through her eyes, because it's like he was our president and we kind of got to know him a little bit, especially if you read his book, his books, Dreams of My Father and Audacity of Hope, then you kind of get to know him. But getting to know him through her eyes, I really enjoyed, because I didn't understand that like everything that we saw of Barack is really who he is. Like, he really is this serious, overly like hopeful, a very optimistic person that really believes that he can change the world. Like, those people that are like so deep that sometimes when you have conversations with them, you're like, okay, bro, calm down, like come back to earth. Like,
she actually did to him multiple times. She actually did tell him like, okay, you're doing a lot, dreamer. like
she's like, Barack didn't like, it wasn't one for happy hours. He's one to read like history books and biographies at night.
Every part of the newspaper.
Like, what?
No, I loved when like they were separated and he was like, he's more of a I'm gonna write you a letter type person. And she's like, okay, no. We're gonna have to talk on the phone.
I love how so independent they were, and like how like neither one of them in their long distance relationship were like going to compromise on what they wanted. It was like, so this is what's going to work for me. And if you want to keep me, this is what we need to do. That's like, Michelle just dropping gems.
I know.
Nothing was funnier than the proposal though. It was
perfect.
Epic.
It was perfect.
Was amazing.
That was amazing.
I thought that was the cutest. It was like two lawyers propose to each other. How do you think the proposal would go down? This is how it would go down between two lawyers.
We're gonna sit here and debate like we're in front of a judge right now.
Yeah.
I really did find it refreshing though that Michelle was the more traditional one and Barack was more of the one that was like, marriage. I don't know.
I also love why marriage was so whatever to him. Like his mom was on the complete other side of the world.
She was a hippie.
Yeah. I was like, this is great. Like Barack's mom is a true blue hippie. Like
100%. And I like the fact that he turned out somewhat normal despite his abnormal upbringing. Like his mom living in like across the world from him, his dad not really being in his life, and having this like whole history as a Kenyan that he didn't really get a chance to tap into fully, despite having the name. Like he had all these things going on, like being raised by his white grandparents and having to kind of like grapple with his biracial identity. Like so much going on, and yet he grew up to be like this outstanding human being. And I'm like, how?
I think it's because he had a more metro or a more cosmopolitan view of everything.
Yeah, he does. Definitely.
Yeah. And it shows heavily now that you know, like he spent so much time going to places and experiencing the people.
Yes, he really got to see the world. Like he lived in Hawaii for a while. He lived in Indonesia. Like he was, you know, he traveled different countries abroad. He went to Kenya to like get in touch with his roots and meet his like dad's side of the family. So it's like he really got to see the world through like the perspectives of all of his like his ancestry. And I think that really informed his politics, his view, and how he treated people, because he definitely treated everyone exactly the same.
It really humbled him to go all around the world and see how different people are living and everything.
Exactly. So I appreciated that insight into him. It's crazy to think that the president we had and the president that we saw, and like how good he was and how great of a speaker, his swag, just everything that we've come to know of him, no matter what your political views may be, I feel like everyone can agree that Barack Obama is like a damn good person and a really cool person. Yeah. And to know that that's actually how he is, like,
right, like it's not just some thing he put out, like this is really 100% him.
Right, and how like Michelle was like in awe of him. In their relationship, I feel like Michelle lived in this tension of like, obviously she was in love with him, but being in awe of him and also resentful of him at the same time, because he challenged everything she knew about herself. Like her whole life, she was a rule follower, and she was just like, you know, okay, gotta graduate and then gotta go to this school and then go to this school and then get, you know, pass my LSATs and then become a lawyer. And she kind of followed this path. I think she called herself a box checker in the book.
Yeah.
Of like doing all these things and not even like thinking like, do I actually want to do this? Do I actually like this? But just doing it to do it because she wanted to achieve and excel, and because she was a Black woman and she wanted to like make her parents' sacrifices worth it. And then here comes Barack, and he completely just makes her rethink her entire life and makes her realize like, actually, I don't like practicing law. This is not my calling. Like, I don't want to do this.
And he was totally supportive.
Yes.
Everything.
She got 2 jobs so she could quit her main job, her job, to go to the one that she loved.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, again.
I know. It just made me love Obama even more. I was like, dang.
It's like, I'm trying. This book is about you, Michelle, but like you're kind of like giving me other reasons to love your husband.
Right.
It's like, oh, without a hesitation, he was just like, go do it. I'm like, because most of the time when that kind of situation happens, the guy expects, in most situations, they expect the women to just drop everything and go for what the guy wants. But he was just like, we will make all of this happen.
I know.
He was always like, why not do it? Like, you know, like if you want to, just do it. Like, that's it.
Yes. Also, 2 other things I didn't know about this section, Becoming Us, that I learned by reading the book is how much she did not want him to go into politics.
Oh, yeah.
How unsupportive she was. She was like,
and then, even before she met him, she was like not here for it.
No.
Yeah. I thought it was that she didn't want to be, I thought she herself didn't want to be involved in politics. I had no idea that it was like from the immediate get-go that like, I want to be clear, I didn't want him to take this path at all.
Yes. And the fact that it put their marriage in danger, like that was crazy to me. I was like, wow, like she was so against it to the point where like they had to go to counseling. Remember that part where they went to counseling because so much resentment had built up over him like pursuing the political arena that he was in. What was it that he ran for? He ran for congressman and he lost.
He ran for state Congress first.
Yes.
And then he ran for Senate. Yeah. But once he became a state senator is when she started building up resentment.
Yes.
Because he wasn't ever home and he wasn't the traditional, it wasn't the traditional situation. And plus I think they both operate on different love languages, but they weren't actually having time to communicate those love languages. So I thought the counseling part was perfection.
Yeah.
Especially because if you think about it, especially in our community, counseling in the general sense is just like, you don't really need that. Just, you'll be out, move on, just conceal your feelings until you explode. So it was nice that she put that in there, that they did go to counseling and they did seek help that they needed.
Yeah, I think it was a nice way to kind of say, like, because I remember when I was reading that part of the book, because I did switch to reading after some point, but when I was reading that part of the book, I just remember thinking like, wow, like this is the place where a lot of marriages start heading towards divorce. Because the bitterness in her tone, how angry she was, how overwhelmed she was. She was like, she was a mom of 2 young children, and she was basically handling the brunt of parenthood, like 90% on her own. Her husband was never there. And she was frustrated, annoyed, pissed off, like the resentment was there. And I was like, this is where a lot of marriages start to break down because the resentment just keeps going and going and going and going. And like you said, Troy, like in our community, there's not a lot of belief in the power of counseling and bringing in like a third party to mediate. And so I feel like people just let it go too far. And then before you know it, you're getting a divorce.
Yeah.
So I liked that she showcased that because I think a lot of times people are like, oh, the Obamas, like couple goals, they're so perfect. And she was like, no, we went through hell.
She also struggled with being a woman. She had to do IVF to get her babies. Like
that part shocked me. I did not know that at all. I did not know she struggled with fertility at all.
Yeah. I was like, whoa.
And it was crazy when the doctor was like, actually, there's really no reason why you guys aren't having kids. You just aren't.
Right. I was like, so we got to work on this doctor's bedside manner because, like, why would you tell a couple that?
I just thought that was crazy because, like, sometimes there really just is no rhyme or reason to it. Just sometimes it just isn't happening and you need help. And that really resonated with me because there were little moments in the books like that of like there's no rhyme or reason to this, but it's happening, like when her friend died.
Oh yeah.
Like it was just that little moment of like there's literally no rhyme or reason to this. Life is really unfair. You think things are gonna go this way and they don't. And it changes the course of your life. And so there were like tiny little moments, like when they found out about her dad's diagnosis. Then when Suzanne died and how she died and how that came about. And side note, did we ever find out what happened to Suzanne's mom? Because remember,
she died before Suzanne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I must not have like.
Because I know that both of them were basically in the hospital at the same time, but her mom's condition was worse than her.
Didn't she die like a week before? Something like that?
It was very close together. I do remember that.
I missed that part of my reading because at that point I was
couldn't imagine my mom doing shit like that at the same time. That would be crazy.
I feel like Michelle didn't come out and say it, but I think she regretted how she handled Suzanne's death because she didn't go to see her.
Yeah.
Until too late. She was in denial.
Well, that's because that was her one friend who really took life and like lived life to the fullest. So to see her friend, the one that like always stood above life, to be dying, I don't think she could process it at the time. That's what I think she was really struggling.
And the combination of Suzanne dying and Barack coming into her life and like kind of Barack's trajectory and how he was approaching his career, that was the two catalysts that made her leave law. I remember that.
Yeah.
Stop practicing law.
And plus he was totally on board with her leaving law.
That's true. Which, I mean, you don't see a lot of like partners being supportive of you leaving over $100,000 a year job to go to a $60,000 a year.
Ooh, when she said that was half her salary, I was like, so you were making $120K? What?
Yeah.
Woo! Like passion overlooks money, and boy does it ever.
I know. So crazy.
Yeah.
But,
oh.
What?
Because it's still in Becoming Us, because it starts the actual, when the rumor started going around that he should run for president, but like he hadn't actually spoken to her. So like every time somebody would ask, he would go, hasn't quite been decided yet. And she was like, that basically means he ain't talked to me yet.
Exactly.
And I was like,
oh.
I was like, cool.
It really was fate, though, just because the way she met Valerie Jarrett when she went to work for the city. Didn't she go work for the city of Chicago?
Yeah.
And she met Valerie Jarrett, and Valerie Jarrett became like a huge catalyst, basically, in Barack's campaign for presidency, and she like had a lot of influence over that whole situation. It was just like the way everything came together was, to me, was so fated. Like the string I saw was like from the point when she was a child and she became friends with what's his name, the Reverend Jesse Jackson's daughter, when she became friends with
I forgot about her
in college. And actually, I think they met in high school, being friends with her in high school and college, and like having that taste of political life as a friend of the family, and kind of getting a taste of that, to like her dad being an alderman for the city, and like getting kind of a taste of that more on the like community side of like working for the community, more the community politics side and the grassroots side. And then going from that to meeting Valerie Jarrett and how that all came about and how she got that job in the city to how she married Barack. I'm like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
It's all connected. I was like,
it was like whether she wanted it to or not, it was already like in her already.
Yes. Her whole life was leading her to be first lady. And that was the part that really like struck out to me when I was reading, was just like, before you even realized it, like these little moments and friendships and interactions and people that you met along the way that you probably didn't think much of were all leading you down towards this path where you ended up.
Yeah. It was just
that was the crazy part to me. I was like, wow, that's crazy.
So I think the first major campaign was Iowa. Is that the one?
Yeah.
Okay. So reading this part, because like when you think of like Iowa and you think about some of these primaries that are in predominantly white areas, like I was just very interested to see how they were going to be perceived.
Yeah.
Because we remember how the media came for Michelle for wearing no sleeves, for like, just being a Black woman.
Yeah.
So I was like, did that start in like, it was interesting to see when that actually started and why it started.
Yes.
And it was just like, wow, that's what set it off? Like, are you serious? Like, we really cannot do the bare, like,
no,
we can't do the bare minimum for anything. She didn't even say what they said she said, and it turned into this whole like, she's brutal, or she's intense, she's got an attitude, and I'm like, so we just threw every stereotype at this woman.
They did, trying to make it stick, and it was like every nasty thing that happened along the way on the campaign only proved Michelle's like opinion on politics. Even to the way like they left the White House at the end and everything that happened, it's almost like I feel like she was proud of Barack and everything he was able to achieve and everything like that. But I feel like at the end of the day, she still has the same opinion on politics that she had from the beginning of like, this is a nasty, nasty game. And you end up having to make compromises that you may not want to make, but you have to make. And it's like, it's just nasty. And she's like, it's not for me. Like, this is not how I want to affect change in the world. Like, this is not it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, Lord. But she believed in Barack and she believed in his dream. So she went along for the ride and she committed to it. But I feel like every nasty thing that happened, every slur, every time they try to come for her, her family, she was like, it was like only proving her opinion more. Like,
yeah, because she was ready to go for blows at one point.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, I was like, this is great. I really wanted to know how she felt about these things. And so it was just like, also, here's my next question. So this is the end of becoming us during the election.
Yes.
When you were reading that part, did you not also start remembering where you were?
Yes.
I did.
I did.
Went back exactly to where I was in that moment. Where
I
were
was
you?
just like, I remember this. I remember running through my dorm screaming when the results happened because I was like a sophomore, I think, and I was literally running through the hall and I was like, "My president is black!" And I'm like, and it turned into like this huge party, like in the middle of campus. Like, reading that part, I was like, "So that's what y'all were doing." Yep, we were doing the same thing. Yep.
And see, when Barack originally ran, I was only 13. So
wow,
everyone's just like, "You're so." I was a kid.
Yeah.
I didn't have any like. I knew he was running. I knew his name. I knew my parents were all excited. So when election day came around, I was in my apartment, and I was not watching it. I was just in front of the TV. Honestly, I did not start caring about politics until I got to be an adult and it started concerning me. And then I was living broke in college, and I was just like, why is this even, what is going on? Like, why is this happening? But I remember his face popping up, and my mom gets up and starts screaming, and I jump, and all of a sudden our whole apartment complex starts screaming because I live in an all Black neighborhood. So everyone just starts screaming outside, and they all run out and they're running around everywhere. And I'm just like,
I think that was when that song "My President Is Black" was out too. So like everybody was blaring that song.
They were.
Yes.
I remember where I was in a friend's apartment the night that he won, and everyone was crying basically. And it was in the middle of the Village in New York City, in Washington Square Park. And I remember we ran to Union Square on 14th Street, and everybody was outside, and all these young kids were like screaming. People were like, had trash cans beating on them. People were climbing on lampposts, screaming. Like, people were in the streets. Like, all the taxi drivers were outside of their taxis. Like, everyone was stopped. Like, everyone was celebrating. It was like it was crazy. Like, I've never experienced anything like it before. Like, people were crying, screaming. Like,
screaming, crying. And I remember because it was like campus police and everybody was like, nobody even stopped us that night.
No.
It was just like, go, we already know y'all are gonna do this for a couple of days. Just
just go on.
And it was interesting because where I was, like, I wasn't like in Harlem or something. So I wasn't like in a Black neighborhood. I was in the middle of the city, and it was people of all races, and it was mostly like young people, like college, like all of us at NYU, and then people younger, and then people a little bit older than us. And everyone was like crying, like, you know, the millennial generation. People were so happy. They were like hugging strangers on the street. They were like,
I had so many people that night hugging and jumping with strangers in pajamas.
Yes.
That's basically what that night was.
And see, for me, reading the part in Becoming Us when they're talking about the campaign trail was really interesting because, again, I was 13. I wasn't paying attention to it. I really didn't know what was going on with him running. I didn't know one of the things they were talking about Michelle Obama. I really didn't know of all of the things they were saying about her up until social media became a thing. So I really like that part of Becoming Us because it was like I got to rewind and actually see what you guys got to see because I was 13 and you guys were what, 17, 18?
I was 18 because that was my first time voting.
Yes, I was a little older than that. I can't remember exactly how old I was.
I didn't get to vote for him either time. I was still either way. I was 17 in 2012.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. But yeah, it was incredible to just see like how she felt personally about all of the attacks that happened. And it was interesting to see like how protective she was of Sasha and Malia. And at the end of the day, that's all she concerned herself with. Yeah. And that's all she cared about. And she was just like, I want my daughters to be protected. Like, I do not want them to have to like know what's going on. That was crazy to me because like at the end of the day, she was just a protective mother. And I feel like a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah. Even though everybody kept trying to say she was unrelatable. And it was just like, do y'all know that this woman literally was like, I can do this, but I need to be home by 8:30.
Yes.
That's my daughter's bedtime.
Exactly.
Every night. Like,
they always think Black people are unrelatable. That's what they say. That's why they don't want to read our books and stuff.
I know.
Relatable.
However, when I went to go get this book at Barnes & Noble's, the amount of, it was clearly all women, but I saw women of every race going to grab this book. So I can't say
that Michelle
reaches a good ground.
Became like this beacon of hope for women, I think. I think there's something in her that a lot of women across all races and backgrounds, and even like even like political, because I know a lot of people that didn't even vote for Obama that really like Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I feel like she bridges the gap a lot. In those ways, because there's something about like she's such a straight shooter when she talks. she's not flowery with her words. Like I remember her interviews, they would just ask her questions and she would just answer the damn question. Like she wasn't beating around the bush and she would just be honest. And I think that was like the lawyer side of her, of just being like, it is what it is. And I think people like that about her. I liked that about her. That's what I connected to, besides her being like this amazing Black woman. I connected to the fact that she was honest, to the point. Like she said it like it was. It is what it is. She's not going to sugarcoat things.
Yeah.
So I think people like that about her. But yeah, this book everywhere I went, like people were talking about it, all different types of people.
And they're always sold out everywhere. Like my aunt wanted to get it for Christmas and it was like only 2 left in our Barnes and Noble.
It's the highest hardcover book in history right now, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, like they said it sold more books in its first 2 days of opening than like the next top selling book sold in like a week or some foolishness. Like her numbers were astronomical in terms of this book.
Can I just say, this is like my first time reading a biography because I hate biographies.
Really?
Like I hate them. I don't find anyone interesting enough. Like I don't find anyone that interesting to read about. Like no one.
I'm not gonna lie, when her husband comes out with his, I'm gonna read his, but hers was the first one that immediately got on my TBR the moment I heard that he was possibly writing it. I do not read biographies.
I don't. Which is funny. Loves them.
For those that haven't read the book, it really took me by surprise how like excellently written this book is, how intricate it is, how dense it is. I felt like every sentence was a paragraph. Like, did you guys feel like that?
Yes,
like,
it was like, how long is it going to take you to read this 3-page chapter?
Especially when you listen to the audiobook, like it's just so much.
Oh my gosh, yes, the audiobook.
Sentence, you're like, oh, that's a gem.
I think I quit the audiobook midway through Becoming Us because because you know when you read the audiobook, you just go check your progress in the story. And I would check my progress and it'd be like 2 pages. I'm like,
yes.
I listened to an hour. Like
I had to speed it up because she was talking too slow for me. So I sped it up, I think, to like 1.5 or
me too.
And that was like the perfect speed. But I definitely will go back and reread the book again and pick up where I left off on the audiobook because hearing her voice just adds so much to it. And so I want to like finish out the story with her voice and not just like reading it. But I guess I went into it with not really expecting anything. And it was like this, like, I don't even know what to call it. Like, it's like this monster of a book. Like, I was just like.
It's so many little tidbits of life lessons like that I highlighted because of certain things that she said when she was explaining how she felt or something like that. And I'm like, I understand what you're feeling right now because you put in such a great story.
I think one of my favorite quotes that she says, I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't have it written down. I listen to audiobooks. So I was like writing things down that I like to hear. But one of my favorite things was when she was basically talking about how Black women are conceived as being loud and like really aggressive. She was like, well, if they're not hearing you, why wouldn't you get louder?
Oh, yeah. When she was upset and they were like, that doesn't make any sense. And I was like, oh,
I know.
Are we moving to this anymore? Because I have a big question.
What?
My big question, first of all, I had no idea that their living quarters was above them and it was housed by African-American butlers. And for some reason that rubs me the wrong way.
Why?
Because I think about the fact that these men are now serving one of the most racist, bigoted people in America. And it's like when I read it from that, all I kept thinking about was, oh my God. These men are probably being treated like crap right now.
Girl, he probably fired them.
I was about to say, I doubt that they still work there.
They work there from all the other presidents. You're so right. I didn't think about that. I gave him way too much credit.
You know what it is, though? I feel like Donald Trump's brand of racism is not very overt. He's not the racist to come at you in your face and say all of these things. He would just treat you like you weren't there. He would treat you like you didn't exist. And it reminds me of a lot of like those old British families and the way they treat their servants. I mean, not all of their servants are Black. Most of the servants aren't Black. They're just like lower class white people, but they literally treat their servants like they're not there. Like they're just furniture, like they're just objects, and they're just there to serve you. And I feel like that is almost worse than just acknowledging that someone is there handing you like a plate or something, you know? And it's like, you just treat the person like they're like not even there at all.
Ooh, hey, Harley Victoria said he's the racist that doesn't acknowledge your humanity.
Yes. Harley, you hit it right.
Perfection.
Like you're not a person to him. Like if you're not a white person, you're not a person to him. And if you're probably not even, you're not a white man, you're not a person to him. You're just
a white rich man. We have to.
You're not a person to him.
Yeah, white rich man.
Yeah.
That's what kills me about like poor white people being so crazy racist and voting for people who are in the top 10% of the world. Like they're not doing anything for you.
No.
That's just, oh man, that is just, I didn't even think about that. That just makes me sad.
It's very sad. And I think a lot of it has to do with like politics is a game to a lot of these politicians because they're rich. They come from richness. They'll never be poor. Like just like the government shutdown, not to get off political, but just like the government shutdown that's going on right now. And the fact that this is the longest government shutdown we've ever had. And it's the way it is because Donald Trump is not willing to bend until they give him what he wants. And they're not willing to give him what he wants because it's just not okay, what he wants. And so it's kind of like, he's not thinking, I highly doubt that he's losing sleep at night thinking, oh my God, these poor government workers aren't getting paid. Like we got to figure out how to like resolve this.
He definitely tweeted that we understand, because I'm a federal employee. He definitely tweeted that we understand how important it is to get this wall. So we're okay. Like it's better for us not to get a paycheck than for him not to get the money for this wall. He literally tweeted that.
I just have a question.
Like, come through this computer.
I just have one question. Does all of Congress and all the Republicans there think that Mexicans don't get on planes?
Well, I mean, if we're going to come to the political reign, technically speaking, the border that needs the most attention is not the Mexican border, it's the Canadian border.
Yeah.
The statistics, that's where they come from the most. And it's not actually all Mexican as he claims.
Yeah.
He's only going to say that to fit his agenda. And then technically speaking, because I have to remember how to say this correctly, his statistics are false. Like he literally just this 4,000 that he came up with, there's no factual evidence to back it up. Like he literally created a number, and he still says that number to this day.
Like I've lived in Texas my whole life, and he is so exaggerative of who comes over here. Like it is so ridiculous.
I live in South Houston where they're supposed to be coming from the droves, and I'm like, where are they coming from?
Girl, right? We live in Houston and they're talking about all this MS-13 and stuff. I'm just like, where?
Like, MS-13 is not in where did you get this? Ain't nobody worried about MS-13 here.
Oh my
coworker, she literally, because she's an older white woman, she was like, well, he said he's right. We need to keep MS-13. I was like, when have you ever heard of MS-13 until he said it?
Right.
You've lived in your whole life and never dealt with MS-13. Stop it.
And that's what I mean by this politics. It's all a game. And I think that games of that caliber where people's lives are at stake and their livelihood and their paychecks can only be played successfully by people that don't have paychecks to worry about. So you have all these rich people, these old rich white men who don't necessarily have like the same concerns as an average American citizen. And so they can't even comprehend. Like Donald Trump cannot comprehend what it's like to not have a paycheck for a week or 2 weeks or whatever. He can't comprehend it because he's never lived that reality. And that's honestly where like I felt the most connection, to bring it back to the book, I felt the most connection to Michelle on that side, because I honestly have ignored this entire like political, I've ignored most of his presidency. I'm not even gonna lie, Donald Trump, because I remember after he was elected, I get these alerts on my phone, and all the craziness that he did within the first month of his presidency gave me so much anxiety. I remember I had to disable my news apps on my phone because every day was another crazy thing he was proposing or saying or doing or tweeting. I just couldn't take it anymore. It was like literally causing me anxiety and stress, and that part resonated with me a lot, how much Michelle like disdained politics in the political arena and how politics worked, and how in a weird way, she was very cynical about it. It was like Barack was all hopeful and like, we can change the world. And I don't think she believed that. I think she believed that Barack could change things.
Yeah.
Now he could persuade people to give money to some stuff, and he could persuade some people to vote for some bills and do some things. But I don't think she overall believed in the political system actually working like the way that it should work for the people. That was the sense that I got from reading the book. I was like, she don't believe none of this.
I think she fights for change, but she fights for change more on the single community level.
Yes.
Because if you notice, like, after she quit law, every job that she did after that was to better the people of Chicago.
Yes.
Her focus was on the people that she can see,
yes.
and the people that can get that impact immediately. And yes. I think that's why she probably chose children.
I agree.
You can see the changes that happen to a child quicker than trying to address like the whole nation, but just focusing on children. I think that was like her Chicago in the White House, basically.
Yeah. And that really resonated throughout the book, is how much of a South Side girl she is. And now it makes sense when Barack gave his like closing speech. I don't know if you guys remember that, but when his presidency was over and he was giving like his like goodbye speech, and he got really emotional when he thanked Michelle, and he kind of teared up, and I thought he was going to cry. Maybe he did. I can't 100% remember. But he called her the girl from the South Side.
Yeah, I remember that.
They're so cute.
And so annoyingly cute.
Reading the book, it makes so much sense, because I'm like, she is the girl from the South Side. Like, that's if she didn't name the book Becoming, she could have named it Girl from the South Side, because that is what she represented throughout everything that she did, how hard she went for Chicago and for the South Side in all of her jobs. Even when she stopped being a lawyer and practicing law, every job she took, whether it be for the city or as a community organizer or when she worked for the hospital, and when she worked for the University of Chicago, everything was about affecting change in her community, and that was the South Side, and opening doors for people and bettering the lives of young people that lived there, and like building opportunities and all these things. And I was like, she is the girl from the South Side. Like, talk about going hard for where you come from, and like being that person no matter what, like even though your circumstances change and like your socioeconomic status changes and all these things, at the end of the day, she's still that girl from the South Side, like 100%. I was like, oh my gosh, she really is. She really is.
It was just like,
it made a lot of sense, because I just remember that I don't know why, but that really stuck with me when he gave that speech, and he got really emotional when he called her that. And I never understood it until I read this book, and I was like, yeah.
Now that you say it, it's like, wow.
Right? It's crazy.
Just wow. Oh, I totally forgot.
What?
So you remember the part of Becoming More where she talked about how
I'm getting hot.
they'd given up so much to be president and first lady.
Yes.
And like that included their weekly date nights.
Yes, that's that.
How like he tried to bring it back by being like super sweet and over the top. And it was pretty much just looked at as like, oh, these Black people are just wasting money.
Yeah.
Like, and they felt like guilty for like 0.2 seconds. And then she was like, I'm not going to regret that, because like we hadn't had a date night in forever.
Right.
And it was like, that is such a humane, like such a simple request. Like, I just wanted to spend some quiet time with my husband.
I know. I did kind of see how, like, I feel like, I'm not sure if other presidents and their wives, if those marriages end up just breaking down, or if because they were the first Black president and Black first lady, they focused on their relationship so much. Because I found that to be odd. Like, I don't remember news stories about like Bill Clinton and Hillary.
Well,
like
Bill was also like not messing with Hillary.
I know. Well, yeah, I mean, after the whole scandal with Monica Lewinsky, I can understand. But do you know what I mean? Like, I don't remember like people talking about like George Bush and what's her name, Barbara.
And then I don't remember.
I think it also has to do with, you think about it, back then there wasn't social media. And so a lot of things we get now are just like, when things go viral on social media, we're all like, oh, everyone's talking about this. It's kind of like people would be like, why isn't no one talking about this? And I'm like, someone was like, do you watch the news? They are talking about it. It's just people think that social media is where all news comes from, and which is where a lot of miscommunication comes from as well. So I feel like because there wasn't that many outlets to even talk about it, like about MySpace? Like, were they gonna put on there that Bush was doing this on MySpace?
Obama holds Michelle's hand and helps her up the step of the plane.
But I know, like, we can all pretend that, like, the news we all know why they did it. They focused so much on their relationship because their relationship wasn't the stereotypical dysfunctional relationship that they just assume that all Black people experience. If they were they're a wholesome family.
Yes.
They're both degreed.
Yes.
They carry themselves with the type of, like, regal elegance that, like, oh, we can't find anything flawed about them there. Obviously, there's got to be a flaw in their marriage. Nope, he's a complete gentleman. Yeah. Oh, man, like, maybe their kids are going to be crazy. Nope, grandma held that down. So they couldn't.
That's why they had to, like, pull things like, oh my God, she touched the queen. Like,
oh my God, her elbows were her shoulders were showing. What?
I know. They were reaching. And now that you bring up, like, that whole part of them being, like, this amazing couple, who else resonated so much with when Michelle talked about how in school when they accused her of talking like a white girl and not being, like, Black enough? Yes. And then Obama got that same thing when he ran for, when that bill came up and he couldn't go back to vote for the bill because Malia was sick. And
that part hurt.
And they attacked his character and basically said that he, like, wasn't Black enough and, like, all this
because his baby was sick.
And they were like, oh yeah, he's not the right Black man for the job. Like, he can't identify with what we're going through.
And then they tried to say, like, oh, it was just an earache. It's not that serious. I'm like, so are we just going to forget that was their first child and that was the first time their baby got sick? Like,
everyone does that with their first kid.
Which is not their home.
But I resonate a lot with the whole talking white thing, because I remember one time me and my childhood friend and one of her guy friends were walking to the store, and he was like, "Where are you from?" And I was just like, "Houston." He was like, "What part of Houston?" And I was just like, "Here in Third Ward." He's like, "Really? You don't talk like you're from Third Ward?" And I was just like, "What does that mean? I don't talk like I'm from Third Ward. I don't talk in Ebonics," is what you're saying.
Pretty much.
I moved to the States when I was 17 years old. I lived overseas my entire life where no one really had an accent. So then I moved to the South, which was probably the worst decision you could ever make from somebody who didn't really know what the South was about. Wow. And yeah, it was like, where are you from? I can't figure it out. You talk white. I'm like, what does talk white mean?
Yes.
And they'd be like, well, you know, you don't talk like us. Like, I'm from here? Why would I talk like I'm from here? I'm not from here.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's very confusing because my father's an English professor so Ebonics was never going to fly in my home just because he believed in enunciation, finishing your words, proper grammar, proper punctuation, all that stuff, because he was an English professor and because Nigeria was colonized by the British, who are a very proper group of people. Mm-hmm. And so it's like he went to schools that were British run schools, and that's how they taught them in, like, the British proper English and things like that. So he just naturally passed it along to his kids. And so that was the part that frustrated me growing up, was the assumption that because of my skin color and because of the way that I look, all of these assumptions that come along with that of, like, you're supposed to look like this and act like this and sound like this. And that was very frustrating because I'm just like, we don't all sound like that or look like this or behave in a certain manner. And I feel like that was the problem that Michelle was having of like, you know, I'm being attacked because my parents encouraged me to, like, you know, use big words, like her grandfather Southside, and how he was really into, like, her enunciating her words, and how he taught her jazz and made sure she was educated musically, and her parents who made sure that she was she sounded educated because they wanted her to do better. Like, her whole family basically came together to make sure her and her brother, like, presented themselves in a better way than what they were around, like, their environment. And then she went around other family members, like cousins, and she was being attacked for that. And I was like, girl, yes.
That's how I was when I came back to visit my family. I hated my cousins. Oh my God, I hated my cousins. I will admit it. Like, my mom always told talk like you've been in school for 12 years. Like,
right.
You've been for this whole time. Why would you not? Like, you don't spend all this money. You might as well talk like you know what you're talking about. No one's going to take you serious if they can't understand you.
My dad would always say, girl, I spent all this money on Catholic school. You gonna talk like that?
It's like a common theme of parents sacrificing so their kids can have better, and not just have better, but sound, look, and act like they do have better. You know what I mean? And so it's like that upward mobility thing that a lot of like Black Americans and Black immigrants do for their kids, of like, we invest everything in their children so that they can have upward mobility, and as much upward mobility as possible. And I feel like that isn't as understood as it should be. Like, people don't understand, like, we're trying to like get out of here.
Right.
I'm trying to get that Black connection going. So
I will admit though, when I get kind of angry, the ebonics do come out.
That's different. That's called disembodying your emotions. That's totally different.
And don't they also call it code switching?
What they call it? What?
Code switching.
You broke up. I can't hear.
Code switching. Have you guys heard of code switching?
Oh yeah, code switching is my daily process. Because technically speaking, I am speaking slang when I'm talking to you guys. When I get to work, it's hello, how are you guys doing? That's fantastic.
Right.
So
I'm on the phone with the doctor. Yes, ma'am. It's been a lovely day. How are you?
Right. All of a sudden, everybody gets so animated. Your shoulders go up a little bit when you speak.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
But it also is, you know what's funny? I never thought I had a country accent, but I used to live in DC, and people would be like, where are you from? And I'll be like, oh, I'm from Texas. And I'll be like, oh, I can tell you're kind of country. And I'm just like, really? I don't have a Southern accent, do I? And my dad was like, oh, a little bit. Someone from the East Coast would think you have one. I was just like, I guess. Like, they used to go, you call your dad daddy? And I was just like,
I didn't understand that either. And then I learned that, you know, a lot of people don't. And I was like, my daddy is.
And also, in this day and age, daddy don't mean what it actually should mean.
Facts.
No. I mean,
I only call my dad daddy when I actually like want something from him, or like if I'm upset. But most of the time, I just call him dad.
I always say daddy.
I call my daddy, especially if I'm really happy. But yeah, I had people that were like, you call your dad daddy? And I was like, is that not just another word for dad? Right? And they were like, well, we call our dad daddy for other things. And I was like, oh.
And then they would think like mama was country too. And I was just like, mama's country?
That's what I call my mom. I call my mom mama. And people
I call her mama.
Where are you from? I'm like, North Carolina.
Oh my gosh. It says, oh, I mean, there's your daddy, and then there's your daddy.
Exactly.
Oh man, that's just, it's okay. Michelle makes me feel happy being the type of Black that I am.
Yeah. Don't worry. If I'm saying daddy, I mean my actual father.
Yeah, I'm only referring to my father.
Oh, God. I can't believe the book is done.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if you guys noticed, but on the poll on the Goodreads page, we did figure out the book for January.
Was it the serial killer sister one?
The serial killer one won.
Oh, great. You guys are going to have me read a serial killer book?
We gonna be okay.
All right.
I mean, I've heard
that get this one from the library. I'm not even going to front.
I think I might as well. The good thing about this one is it's short.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, we just finished reading an over 400-page book for Becoming was over 400 pages, I think. It was.
I'm convinced it's technically 400 something pages, but I'm convinced it was like extra 600.
Girl.
Small enough so that it could have been a 600-page book. I don't care what they say.
It read like it was a 600-page book.
What was the title of the book that we're reading next?
My Sister the Serial Killer, right?
Yes.
Okay. My Sister the Serial Killer.
And that one's by Oyinkan Braithwaite, I think is how you say her name. So she's a Nigerian author. So that should be interesting. I've heard good things somewhat. I haven't read too many reviews, but people that I have seen on Bookstagram seem to have enjoyed the book. And they also say that it's short, but it packs a lot into how short it is. So I think that would be a nice break, because it's nice to kind of read something shorter, something that will be easier to get through and not be as dense and intense. Well, maybe not.
I think it's going to be just as intense, but a different intensity. Yeah.
And it may be worse if it's shorter, because that means it's all just like
I'm a little hesitant about a serial killer book being shorter, because I feel like we're about to get like all of the crazy in a shorter span.
I feel like all this book is going to do is make me now talk to my sisters again.
Oh, really? I love books about sisters, and like, I love books about sisters and female friends, because I feel like there aren't enough.
Yeah. I would love to get a book about Black sisters.
I know. I'm sure there's one. We probably just need to find it.
Yeah, we got to do some searching.
Yeah.
So give me a book about how sisters are supposed to be. My sisters aren't that great.
My sisters don't read, so we wouldn't be able to connect on that either.
Teddy, what is wrong with you? But yeah, so I'm excited for that. I'm gonna get it. I think I'm gonna actually just buy it off of Amazon.
I feel like for that type of book, I need to buy it, because obviously annotating and I are besties.
I need to start doing that. I really want to start annotating, because to close out talking about Becoming Michelle, I wanted to read the quote that I really liked from the back.
I bet you I know which quote you're about to read.
I'm sure you know. Okay, for me, becoming isn't about arriving somewhere or achieving a certain aim. I see it instead as forward motion, a means of evolving, a way to reach continuously towards a better self. The journey doesn't end. I became a mother, but I still have a lot to learn from and give to my children. I became a wife, but I continue to adapt to and be humbled by what it means to truly love and make a life with another person. I have become, by certain measures, a person of power, and yet there are moments still when I feel insecure or unheard. It's all a process, steps along a path. Becoming requires equal parts patience and rigor. Becoming is never giving up on the idea that there's more growing to be done.
That's my last tab in the book, too.
Yeah, that quote really stuck with me and resonated with me, because I feel like we're we're constantly asking ourselves like what we are and what we want to be and who we are and what we want to do. And it's like a constant question, even if we are like set in our careers, or for those of us that are like married or have kids. I feel like it's a constant evolving question where you keep asking yourself, like, is this really what I want? Like, who am I? Like, who am I trying to be? Like, you know, and it never really stops. And I like that she acknowledged that, because I feel like when you're young, you have this idea that when you grow up, everything will be set in stone as long as you have a good job, a spouse, and kids. I mean, that's how it's sold to women in our society. Like, oh, you will have arrived when you have these things. And we kind of think that as children growing up. And then when you actually do grow up, you're like, actually, we never arrive anywhere. We're constantly
always transforming.
Mm-hmm. So I really enjoyed that quote. I was like, yes. Like, even someone like Michelle Obama, who to the outside world and from even reading the book has achieved so much and is like such an amazing and inspirational person, can say that.
Have those silent moments where just like
her whole life flash before your like
just like
that was like a That's So Raven moment.
Yeah.
Where she saw the future.
Oh no, not That's So Raven.
Yes.
Like, I forgot I was on live for just a quick second because I was in that mode.
Troy, any final thoughts on this book?
Everyone who hasn't read it should go read it.
Audiobook it.
Yeah.
1.5.
Yeah, at 1.5, exactly.
Please, because I love you, Michelle, but when she reads and you're like, wow, I've gotten so far, and then you look 16 hours to go. Like, what?
I'm just telling you now, though, if you speed it up, don't put it back because all of a sudden it's going to sound like she's talking. I promise you. I tried to go back, it didn't work out.
You're so right. Because at that point, I was like, I think when I slowed it back, then I was like, screw it, I'm gonna just read it.
Yeah.
Her voice is great. It'll sound like you're talking to her while she's sitting in her kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Like while y'all are just sitting in the kitchen table, just having a conversation. That's what it'll sound like at 1.5.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, so that was Becoming by Michelle Obama, first official live show for the book club. So exciting. And we will be reading My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite for our January book. And we will have until February 10th-ish or so to finish reading. We will announce the February live show when we get closer to that date. But definitely thumbs up this live. It's going to be saved on my channel so you can watch it back, or for those that are just joining after the live. And then make sure you go onto the Goodreads page and join the book club and follow us, and make sure you're getting all the updates there as well.
This is so great. I'm so excited that we're doing this.
We have such a good
What's going on?
Yes.
And the next time we won't be 30 minutes late.
I know. Yeah. Sorry, we had technical difficulties, so things were a little rough, but we made it. Yay. And that's it for this live. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast now. We will catch you guys in our next live show.
Bye, guys.
Bye.